Hey y'all. So one of the things that I forgot to mention was we did get on a long rant, not rant, the topic of religion and belief. And this was one of the things I found funny that this is one of the first things we talked about on the first date, which he was not really comfortable with, but I loved because I love to honestly, sometimes I love to debate Christians on what they think they believe. And the reason why is because I want, and I know this is probably bad, but I want some of them, not all of them, because not all Christians believe the same thing. I feel like some Christians are like loosely based in their beliefs, but I want them to understand how a lot of shit that they believe don't make sense. Like, for example, I was explaining to him that the positive and the negative, the good, the bad, the angels and the devils, and all of that type of shit is made up of everything that is God. Okay, the first thing I asked him, do you believe that God is the universe? Do you believe that God made the universe? He said, yes, of course, God made the universe. And I said, within that universe exists positive energy and negative energy. Is that correct? It's like, yeah, of course. And I'm like, okay, well then, is it um is it okay to assume that God is made up, that God is the equivalent of positive and negative energy neutralized? And he's like, what? What? That doesn't make sense. I'm like, well, think about it for a second. You just agreed to the fact that you said God is the universe. God has made the universe. God lives in and throughout the universe. The universe is made up of positive and negative energy. So that could be positive protons, neutrons, and electrons. Or, I'm sorry, protons, electrons. God, it's a neutron. But anyway, protons and electrons, and positive, negative, good and bad, and all that shit, right? And that is what the universe is made up of. And so that means if God is the universe, God made up the universe, then God is the equivalent of positive and negative energy balanced. God is a representation of the positive energy and the negative energy finding balance. The reason why we consider ourselves imperfect, and I also stress that imperfection is a human definition. Imperfection doesn't exist in the universe. Everything is perfect in the universe. We only consider ourselves imperfect because we feel like we are unable to maintain a constant equilibrium, which is true. As humans, we find it very hard to maintain balance. It's because the type of lives that we live, the type of world that we live in, and in this world, we're not meant to maintain balance. We're actually meant to learn the lessons of what it's like to not be able to maintain balance. That's the whole point of this experience. So I got him thinking like a motherfucker. I'm like, well, what you're saying doesn't make sense if you agree that God and the universe, if you agree that the universe is made up of positive and negative energy and the universe is God, why is it too far of a stretch for you to believe that God is positive and negative energy? And I also went as far as to explain that positive and negative energy is really relative to the person who's perceiving it. So, to someone who you would consider to be evil or bad, in their life, if all they known was negative energy and then they see you come in with positive energy, what's the first thing they're going to think? They're going to think there's something fucking wrong with you. They're going to think that, no good can come from you because you are not something that they know of or that they're sure about. So, wouldn't it be, possible that they would perceive you as something that is quote unquote evil to them? And vice versa. If if a good person were to meet an evil person, since they've never seen that type of behavior before, what would they consider to be, they would consider that person to be something of negativity or something that they don't want around them because it's not something that they've experienced before. So, what is a true definition of good and bad? It's really all perception, you know? And what else I was saying? Um, I was talking about, I even got on the subject of like hoodoo and voodoo, and he's like, hoodoo? What the hell is hoodoo? I'm like, I tell you, I love to study religion. I love anything about religion. Um, in people's cultures, and I know, I like to study those type of things. And I was like, only difference between someone who does hoodoo, voodoo, and someone who prays is or not even someone who prays, but only difference between all of these things, religion, voodoo, hoodoo, witchcraft, and all this other shit, is what we perceive of intention. So you perceive someone who does witchcraft, hoodoo, voodoo as evil because number one, you know absolutely nothing about it. Number two, you only know of the negative things that has happened with that type of energy. I was like, what's the difference? I told him basically, I'm gonna tell you exactly what hoodoo, voodoo, and witchcraft is. It's putting your intention on something, giving it to the universe, and believing that the universe will deliver it to you, and you receiving that blessing, or you receiving that thing that you asked for. In prayer, what are you doing? You're praying for something to happen. You're giving that to God, God, the universe, and you're expecting that thing to come back to you in return, whatever that is. You know, that's all voodoo, hoodoo, witchcraft is intention. What is, we talk about the difference between good intention and bad intention. You talk about witchcraft and hoodoo and voodoo as bad intention. Well, what is the difference between someone who, is extremely judgmental? You walk in church and then someone looks at you, oh, there's something wrong with him. He's with that girl, they're together, they're not married. They don't, they got kids, but it's something wrong with their life. And that person is putting negative energy towards you. So, what is the difference between someone wishing bad upon you or causing bad things to happen upon you with voodoo and hoodoo versus someone who is praying bad things toward your life? You know, I think, yeah, I get what you mean. But, it's like, yeah, you get. I was like, yeah, you get. And he was like trying to, defend his argument, and that's fine. But I'm like, you're defending something, but what you're saying doesn't make sense. And I was also talking about the difference between Jesus and I. It's like people say that Jesus is the Son of God. And then they also say, I am a child of God. So if Jesus is the Son of God and you are the Son of God, what's the difference between you and Jesus? And I said, the only difference between you and Jesus was, number one, he was woke as fuck. I got the hiccups, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Jesus was woke as fuck. Jesus knew and completely and totally understood the powers that resided within him. The only difference between you and I is that we don't understand those powers. I'm sorry, hold on, I'm gonna have to hold my breath. Oh, shoot. And I still got hiccups. Oh, shit. I don't hold my breath long enough. But anyway, he was like, I can't be like Jesus. I said, yeah, you can't be like Jesus because you don't think you can. You don't think you can be. If you believed in your heart of hearts and knew exactly who you were and knew exactly the power that resides inside of you, just like Jesus said, you can do this and more that I have done here. You know, Jesus even told you himself that you can do these things that I do and more. Excuse me. So what is the difference? Jesus himself told you you can be like me. You can be like me or do the things that I do or do greater things that I've done. So what's the difference? you know. And he's like, yeah, 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 that's true. But. I'm like, but what? Like, but what? I'm gonna hold my breath again. Excuse me. Hopefully that remedied my hiccups. But anyway, so he was like, yeah, yeah, I hear you, I understand. That's true. But. I'm like, but what? He's like, but, you know, have you ever met anybody who can do what Jesus does? I'm like, no, I haven't met anyone. Well, see, you haven't met anyone. So I'm like, so you're saying just because you have never met a person who can do what Jesus does, or just because you've never read about a person who can do what Jesus does, that person doesn't exist? Like, well, I mean, have you? I've never found it. I'm like, so just because you have never met a person like Jesus, you actually believe that it's not possible, even though Jesus himself told you that it was possible to do what he does and more. So you calling Jesus a liar? My nigga got this nigga reeling like, no, no, but no, no. I'm like, but think about what you're saying. This is the type of stuff, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. So the only difference between Jesus and me is Jesus was fully realized in the power that he knew that existed within him. I'm still learning that shit. I'm still trying to believe the powers that exist within me. I'm still trying to believe that, you know? It's the only difference between Jesus and I. We are cut from the same cloth. We are of the same soul. I'm still trying to learn that I am great. Jesus already knew he was great. Well, it took him time to know, but you get what I mean. So, yeah, just explaining that kind of stuff to him to get him to think about what he believes. And then we were talking about the Bible, and I was like, I use an example. I was like, so you believe that everything the Bible says is true because somebody told you? He's like, no, but the Bible says. I'm like, I want you to consider this really quick. I referenced the commercial, right? Just an example, just as an example. I'm pretty sure you guys seen that Geico commercial where this chick was talking to her neighbor, and she was basically saying she heard some stuff on the internet, and she said it was true, and he was like, she's like, yeah, everything that you read on the internet is true. And he was like, well, where did you read that? Like, where did you hear that? She was like, the internet. She's like, here's my boyfriend. He's a French model. I met him on the internet. And the dude was like, bonjour. And she truly believed that the guy was a French model, even though he looked atrocious. And I'm like, that is the same concept that you believe. The Bible says that everything in the Bible is true. And you made a choice to believe that everything that the Bible says is true. Do I feel like the Bible has elements of truth? Hell yeah. The Bible has a lots of elements of truth. The book of Psalms is one of my favorite books. I even explained to him that people who practice hoodoo and voodoo use the book of Psalms as a book of spells, but you know, he was definitely getting really uncomfortable about that. But anyway, I was like, so you're taking a book that was written by man, just like the internet was written by man, and you believe everything that you've written just because it said it's true. Like, when you really think about that for a second, does it really make sense? You know, we already know that man is imperfect. You said it so yourself, that man is imperfect. Man wrote the Bible, not God. Man wrote the Bible as an interpretation of what they believed God was at the time. And you took all of that and believed it as true. You should think about that for a second. Have you ever considered there was something else outside of God? And I was like, and we were talking about different things that, God said in the Bible. It's like God may have said that, man may have said that God said that in the Bible, but that's not what God told me. That's He's like, well, you mean to tell me that all these millions of people said? I was like, no, millions of people didn't say anything. The book said that this was true, and millions of people chose to believe it, but I chose not to because it didn't resonate with me. So yeah, it's not true to me. So I don't walk by that principle. He was like, he was kind of taken back, like, oh, this girl is crazy. Like, this girl is really weird. She's different. But I like making people think. I was watching a documentary about Socrates and how he went around challenging people and their beliefs, and I kind of feel like that's kind of my job. And I feel like in the beginning the goal was to be right. Now the goal is really to change the way people think. You don't have to stop believing what you believe, but I just like to offer you a different way of thinking. You know, what's really true? Is it true because you say it's true? Or do you believe it's true because someone told you it's true? You know, I was like, anything you say of yourself is absolute. So if you say you can never be like Jesus, you say you can never live like Jesus, then you never will, ever in this life. Be careful what you say, you know. Child had this dude going. He probably gonna be thinking about most of this shit for the rest of the night. But anyways, y'all. Thank y'all so much for listening. I love y'all. And I hope that you guys will have a great night. I'm going to bed. My phone, as you probably heard, is about to die. So I love you. Love you.